There we go. Uh, the water from these up the canyons, up the streams, that's all coming into our watershed and flowing through our watershed. Something that's important to think about when you think about watershed and the flow through it is that water picks up stuff along the way. The soap and chemicals from washing a car outside, or the oil, off the streets, animal waste, even trash can all end up in our watershed as water from storms flows across them through. So it's important to always keep those things clean and picked up. So for the Santa Clarita Valley, we have a number of water supplies. We're very fortunate that we're not reliant on any single one source of water. So we have all of these different water supplies that we like think of as different buckets, and they pour into a bigger bucket that meets the needs of Santa Clarita Valley. And that could be health needs, safety needs, recreation needs, irrigation needs, any of those. So let me just tell you about a couple of those buckets. This is a graphic that shows our watershed from a different point of view. So we have precipitation up here, the Castaic Lake, and everything flows down here to the Santa Clara River. So three main supplies that we have are imported water, and that is what's coming from Castaic Lake. And I'll show you a quick slide on each of these things with a little more detail. So I'll just go over high level at this moment. So we have imported water supplies, which includes water banking and transfers. And then we have local supplies, which includes groundwater and recycled water. Now, our imported water comes from the State Water Project. If you look at this map, the blue lines are all natural rivers and creeks and conveyances. This green line is the canal, the aqueduct that I bet many of you have seen when you're out driving around. For us, we are down here almost at the very western terminus of the state aqueduct. And so our water is traveling almost 600 miles before it reaches us, from the snowpacks of the Sierras down to us in Castaic Lake. And then I mentioned earlier banked water and imported water. We have water stored underground in groundwater aquifers in Kern County. And that is a source of water for us in dry years. And we pipe that in through the aqueduct also. Then I mentioned we have our local groundwater as well. This is kind of a cross section. We have two main aquifers. We have a shallow one, the alluvial aquifer, which is circled in blue. And this is served by shallow wells, alluvial wells. And then we have the Saugus aqueduct down here in yellow, served by these deeper wells, which can be almost 2,000 feet deep. So this is a very deep aquifer. And something, I've only been in water for 5 years. I did not know that aquifers were just basically like sand and gravel and dirt, and water fills the spaces. I always pictured these big underground caverns, which is like a giant bathtub, and it's not. So all of this here represents sand and gravel that water seeps into. And speaking of seeping, we see a lot of huge storms happening right now, and we see a lot of water running down the Santa Clara River. And we get asked a lot, how come we're not capturing that? How come it's just being wasted out to the ocean? We have a lot of efforts underway to get more stormwater recapture, but I wanted to just show you this graphic briefly. If you have an oversaturated water table and aquifer and heavy rains, and they're running into the river, and this is already saturated, the sand and gravel can't hold any more water, it's just going to flow down. But when we get slower, steadier rains spread out over a longer time, then it's able to recharge and the ground can dry up again. We can get more water, it recharges, and the ground dries up again. And that applies to the snowpack water that we talked about before. When we get heavy snows in Northern California, but then we get warmer weather and rains and it all melts at once, the ground is just too saturated to be able to capture and store that. So we are always working on recharge projects. We've got some pilot projects going out along Castaic Creek. And we also work with the city and county on some stormwater recapture projects that they are involved in. So that's groundwater. Now, making up a very tiny piece of our water portfolio right now is recycled water. It's only about 1% of the water that we serve. And let's see. Those two areas are built or in the construction phase and just need to be hooked up. These other two areas, this blue pipe up here and this orange pipe down here, are future phases. Total, we'll get about 10,000 acre feet of water once this is built out, maybe not quite. And it seems like that's an easy grab to do recycled water, but there are actually a lot of challenges to that. There is water that comes out of the two water treatment plants, not ours, but the sanitation district, that flows into Santa Clara River. And that flow has been there for so long that the ecosystem along the Santa Clara River is used to it. And there's species of plants and fish and animals down there that have grown accustomed to that amount of flow, that temperature of water. And so we can't just decide like, okay, we built more pipes, so we're going to start diverting more of that water because that ecosystem is dependent on it. So what we do is, as each new project is built that's going to be creating more treated wastewater, we measure that so that we can start diverting it now before it becomes adapted to the Santa Clara River. So that's the source of recycled water as we're able to build this out in the future. We do have some water quality challenges. Don't want to scare anybody, so I'm going to start with how we take care of them. There's a few listed here, PFAS, I'll go over that one a little bit more. And then we also have, a lot of people are familiar with this former industrial site kind of in the middle of town that did rocket fuel and some other projects back in the 40s and 50s and left some remnants of contamination that has seeped into some of our groundwater. But we know where that water is. We know where those plumes are. We know how to treat it. So we have a full-time staff of lab scientists and water quality control experts. We have our own lab for testing and sampling, and we do that regularly. And then we install treatment where it's needed to remove that from the water before it goes into the distribution system. PFAS, though, kind of snuck up on us. We had tested for it at the request of EPA. This was done nationwide. We found it was pretty widespread here. And so we immediately shut down every well that reached a certain level of PFAS. PFAS is found in just thousands of commonly used products. If you have something that is waterproof, stain-proof, oil-proof, or resistant, it was probably made that way with a PFAS chemical. So you commonly hear about it in old Teflon pans, but like a pizza box, your cheeseburger wrapper, your Gore-Tex snow gear, a lot of those things have been made with PFAS in the past. And it's just so ubiquitous in the environment, it just gets shed and ends up in our water. But like I said, we test that water regularly, and we have been building treatment plants to remove it at the source when it comes out of the groundwater before it goes into the distribution system. All right, then just one more challenge I want to talk about is the drought. So even though we just had 9 atmospheric rivers hit California in some of the wettest years that we can remember, if you look back in 2019, after a couple of wet years, at the state map. So the lighter the color, the lower the amount of drought. 2019, the next one's 2020, 21. You can see where most of the state was in extreme or exceptional drought. And then wait. Oh, here we go. Let me just scroll through a few of these. May 2022, December 2022, January 3rd, and then just yesterday, February 21st, 2023. And you can see how the state kept getting lighter and lighter, but we are still in abnormally dry, that's the bright yellow, to moderate drought, to even still some severe drought. Because the water came so hard and fast, like I mentioned before, it's hard to capture it. So it really helped us, but we're not out of the drought entirely statewide, and certainly not in Santa Clarita Valley. And so while our customers have done an amazing job at reducing their use, you can see the lighter blue is the production. And if we went further over here into January 2023 with the gold bar, of course, as more rain comes, the less water we use otherwise. And so our goal is just to make that water conservation a way of life. It's not something we need to do during a drought. We have climate variability. We have very wet years, very dry years, and we as consumers of water need to find a constant, sustainable manner of using our water for beneficial use and not wasting it. We might have enough water, but never, ever enough to waste. So one of the things that SCV Water does towards that end is offer a lot of resources and rebates. You can go to usscvwater.com/save water and money and learn about lawn replacement, irrigation control, efficiencies, programs, and resources. We were just looking at some stats, and over the course of 2022, as we really promoted these programs and lawn replacement specifically, we had a 320% increase in the number of lawn replacement projects that were started, and over 900% increase in the square footage of turf that was removed and replaced with sustainable native landscaping and drought tolerant landscaping. So we're really excited about what our customers have done. And I am going to stop there. That just gives you a little bit about where our water comes from, some of the things that the challenges we deal with, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Yeah, feel free to use the chat if you are comfortable doing that, or raise your hand, or we have such a small group, I think people can just come off mute and ask questions as well.
I know that was a lot, and I was speaking fast to keep to my 15 minutes. But definitely want to invite people. I realize I just put usscwater.com up here, but droughtreadyscv.com is our go-to spot for everything about our water supply in times of drought and all of the resources that we have. See, Peter has his hand up.
Thank you, Kathy. I was, even after a couple of years of learning more and more about the situations in the area, I picked up more information there, and it was really helpful. Let's see. I think what I want to do is I'd love to get a sense of. Do you have a sense of what the numbers are with people who might be trying to participate in changing out landscapes and things like that?
I do. So we had across all of our conservation programs, which includes changing out their irrigation system or participating in our free Water Smart workshop online, where you can get a $20 credit towards your water bill, our lawn replacement program, all of those things. We had almost 3,000 people participate last year, and it was about a 26% increase over the year before. In 2022, when our board declared a stage 2 water shortage contingency or water shortage contingency plan, stage 2, yes, that's it. We just really stepped up our offerings and our messaging to get the word out and let people know we have ways to help them make those changes and reduce the financial burden on them to do so. I want to say we have about 100 and some lawn replacements going on right now.
Wow.
And that is for residential and commercial. We do it for commercial too. As a matter of fact, we're getting ready to start one with Promenade Apartments here in downtown Valencia. And they're going to be replacing 77,000 square feet of turf. We're really excited. It's going to be just a showcase project for them and for us.
see, did we have, and I guess the other question I'd put out is, are you still planning on the water, is it the Water Ambassador Program or the Academy? I'm trying to remember what the name of that is.
Yeah.
Where people can get a more in-depth, because some of the folks on this call might have some interest in that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We actually have a couple things coming up. Next Thursday, we have a virtual webinar called After the Storms, and it will talk a little bit about what I talked today, but in more detail, and a little bit more about the specific impact of these storms on our water supply and what that means going forward. And then later in March, we're starting our inaugural edition of a Water Academy. We have closed applications. We got twice as many applicants as we have space. So the response has been awesome. We're working to increase the number we can accommodate this time. But just because of the popularity, we will definitely be making that a recurring activity. Excuse me, yes, March 1st is our, thank you. Yes, Water Matters After the Storm is March 1st. You know what, I'm going to stop sharing my slide and pull up a link I can share on that too.
And can you say a little bit more about the Water Ambassador Program?
So Water Ambassadors is a 4-week program. The group is going to meet on 3 Wednesday evenings and a Saturday, 2 hours each time, where they're going to get a chance to kind of get a really behind the scenes look at how our water agency operates. We'll talk a little bit about some of the topics we touched on tonight, but also the history of our water agency in the Valley, our financing and capital improvement projects, how we treat water, and answer some of the burning questions that we're building into the curriculum. You know, people a lot of times have questions about water supply and new development. So we'll be addressing all of those tough issues and giving them a chance to just meet with our executive staff and our experts to really learn more about it in a small group of 20 to 25 people, where they'll be able to learn from each other as well.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Kathy, for that. That was wonderful. And now we'll switch over to what is Water Talks. So Water Talks, also known as the Disadvantaged Community Involvement Program, or DAC-IP, is a public program designed to generate and increase community involvement in planning a sustainable water future for California. It is funded through California Proposition 1 and the Integrated Regional Water Management System, or IRWM, or IRWM. Locally, this program is called Water Talks. Its goal is to involve 128 under-resourced or underrepresented communities in Los Angeles and Ventura counties in designing water projects and programs that directly benefit those communities. Tree People serves as the primary consultant in the Upper Santa Clara River area under guidance from the Water Talks Task Force. And we work in a tight-knit partnership with Council for Watershed Health, Stantec, local organizations, and town councils, many of whom are here this evening. All right, next slide. Oh, and one thing I want to say actually on that other slide real quick is that these are the areas for Water Talks, and you'll see that Ventura County is part of it, the Upper Santa Clara region, and then also the Greater LA region, which you'll hear referred to as the GLAC region, so Greater LA County. All right, next slide. So there are 4 major components to the program. Number 1, engagement. So authentic and often action-based community engagement, working with local organizations trusted by their communities. Number 2, a thorough strengths and needs assessment completed in 2022. Data from this assessment is available at the website listed on the screen, that Redesign LA. And the data from this assessment is available on the website listed on the screen, where you can find the final narrative report and dashboards where the data is displayed in a visual format. Number 3, development of projects that were identified based on the assessment. So we have been using community identified need to drive project design. And then lastly, workshops such as the one here today, where we share what we've been learning and strengthen the process of community-driven design. We've held workshops specific to community-based organizations, agencies and electeds, audiences wanting to be allies to tribal communities, and today for interested community leaders and the general public. All right. And then next slide here. Okay, and so here, like I just said, there's these 3 main components: the community engagement, the strengths and needs assessment, and project and program development. So we designed the Water Talks program to have these 3 major components, and at the center is the strengths and needs assessment, which inspires the development of new projects and programs. Community engagement is core to each and every stage of this program. And then this slide, which is just showing the timeline of where these activities occurred. So Water Talks has attempted to forge a different model in the area of project development. This model seeks to place community interest and input as close to the point of project conception as possible. And now the needs assessment. So the Upper Santa Clara River Needs Assessment was conducted by Cal State San Bernardino. And the approaches. So of the assessment, so anonymous surveys, community strengths and needs were asked, and they were framed around 2 questions. What do we love about our community, and what are our top concerns? Identifying, and there was also a call out specifically to top concerns around water. So the goal of this was to identify needs around top water concerns and zero in on what folks are concerned about. Is it problem flooding? Is it arundo or invasive weeds in the waterways, or issues concerning septic systems? There was a range of needs that were identified through this process. Next slide. So the data collection happened between September 2020 and July 2022. Up in the Upper Santa Clara River, 278 surveys were collected, reflecting 9 communities and 2 institutional interviews. Okay, so now this slide, we will be sharing this PDF with you after this event, but this kind of fun shoots or ladder infographic that the wonderful Chris Imhoff designed here kind of works you through from concept to funding. So how, when you have a project, a need that is identified, how do you move that into a project concept, and then finally to funding? So we're just going to kind of go through the parts of this shoots and ladders. So the first one, so down there at the bottom, start here. So the first thing is relationship building. So that getting a sense of the ground and engaging the community to identify the needs and concerns and where local issues are happening. You want to engage local electeds to share what the community needs are and to gain that support. There are also, and I will drop these links in the chat. Let me just do that really quickly here. So there are 2 different, whoops, boom. Okay. So you can attend the Upper Santa Clara River Watershed IRWIM, or the Integrated Regional Water Management Committee. And that is one of those links there. You can sign up to get on that mailing list. And then the other one is the WASC, which is for the Safe Clean Water Program, or Measure W. And the WASC stands for the Watershed Area Steering Committee. Lots of acronyms here. So the reason why, or a reason to be going to those is just to listen and learn, to hear about the different projects that are going on, and to see if they get approved for funding. If you go on the link for the second one, for the Santa Clara River WASC, you can find when the meetings are coming up. You can see the agendas. You can see the attachments, like the presentations for the different projects that have come through. It's really a great way to hear about the projects that are coming to your community, be involved, and raise your voice. All right, the next slide here. So this one is about problem or project identification. And this part of the process is ongoing. So you want to keep the community involved and informed about what's going on. You can do that by setting up tours like we've done and we will continue to do to see completed projects to get people a sense of what can be done. You can create newsletters or emails, have community meetings. That second part is to work with others to explore solutions. You can work with your city or county public works department or with the watershed coordinator for the Safe Clean Water Program, which is Peter Massey, or myself. Again, that's the Measure W, LA County funded tax measure. You can work with tree people for community greening projects or work with your local town councils or elected officials. So, and this last one is talking about identifying problems and issues that need to be solved. And like we were showing how that happened with the community needs assessment, but any surveying, door knocking, going out and meeting community where they are and hearing from them about needs related to water work. Next slide, please. Okay, so concept building. So this is about determining what funding to apply for. So there you have different processes and procedures. So the Safe Clean Water Program is annual, and that is going to be going on for at least the next 30 years. Whereas IRWIM, or the Integrated Regional Water Management System, has funding cycles that can vary and could be multiple years apart. So we just ended the round 2 of Prop 1 funding for IRWIM, and so that has closed for now. And we do not know when funding is coming again, but that's something to keep an eye out for. The next part is about finding partners to build capacity and who have the ability to take those projects on. So find a proponent or an agency willing to take the lead. Find other organizations to be a part of the conceptual design. And again, connecting with elected officials always helps to keep things moving along. So you have to identify those responsible for the land. An example of this could be perhaps you have a very active parent group at a school that has ideas about doing a school greening project or a stormwater project on campus. They would need to get the approval, obviously, from the school district before being able to submit a proposal. So something of that nature to make sure that you engage the landowner and make sure they are a willing partner. Put together a concept plan. So work with others to turn it into a full proposal. You can work with the watershed coordinators like Peter Massey and I. And if it happens to be outside of our region, there are 9 watersheds designated by the Safe Clean Water Program outside of the Santa Clara River. So there are other watershed coordinators to connect if it happens to be outside our area. And depending on the size of the project, you may need a fiscal sponsor or a consultant to help with the proposal. And then this last part is keeping on top of other public funding. So there's the federal sources like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or the Inflation Reduction Act. There's also several county measures like Measure W that we've been talking about, Safe Clean Water. There's also Measure A, that was the Parks Initiative through the County of LA, or Measure M, that was the Metro or Transit. But there's lots of varieties, and I will also drop in the chat here some places where you can find information about these grant opportunities. So here is one for Infrastructure LA. And then this other one is Redesign LA, which has the California Grants portal. And also there is information about all those county measures I mentioned. Measure W, Measure A, Measure M. So you can find all that there. It's a really great place to find out about funding opportunities. Okay, next slide. So here is the Upper Santa Clara River Integrated Regional Water Management Committees, or the IRWIM. So you want to get on the schedule to present your proposal or concept to those committee meetings in your area. So it can take several meetings to get through all the projects and to decide which projects they will choose to fund. The other side of the bucket there is the Safe Clean Water Program Scoring Committee. So projects are scored by the scoring committee, and a minimum amount of points are required for a project to move forward. And again, there's a lot to this, but we as watershed coordinators are great resources. Also the website, the Safe Clean Water Program website, has a lot of information about all of this stuff. All right, next slide, please. Okay, and then there's the EARWIM committee that chooses the projects that they want to package together for funding. And again, that can take like 6 or more months. And then after the Board of Supervisors has to eventually approve each of the different watershed area steering committees funding packages. So that also can take time because it's once a year that happens. So applications for the next round of funding will be due this July 31st for the Safe Clean Water Program. And again, that's just a 1-year opportunity to apply for this program, the Safe Clean Water Program. Next slide, please. Okay, so the state receives the proposal. So the state determines which proposal to fund and sends notifications. If for some reason your project is not chosen, you have to go down the chute and try to find another funding source. And then let's say your project is approved for funding. So your project approval and you begin. So your paperwork and agreements with the applicant, the subcontractors are hired, you begin the project process. And this can take up to 10 years. So as you can see, this can be a very long process. So it's good to just kind of manage expectations about how long projects like this can take. And then the other thing is that there's so many different pots of funding now, whether it's all those county measures, the federal money, different state funding. So keeping an eye on that. If for some reason you don't make it through one of these different pots, there's always another way to try, another grant to try. Okay. And now I will turn it over to Peter Massey.
Well, before I jump in here, I just wanted to, thanks Amanda for that. And I just wanted to see if there were any questions about what Amanda was going through. It was a lot. And, we don't mean to make light of the situation by setting it out as though it's like a board game of some kind in order to get an infrastructure project set up and moved through all of the different steps. But it is kind of an interesting analogy and kind of a useful way of looking at it. It's like, sometimes, do not pass go, do not collect $200 situations where trying to move things forward. So just wanted to take a pause to see if there were any questions before we move on to talk about some actual projects that are emerging out of the Water Talks program. And if not, I will jump in further with that. So the kind of the last stage or the last component of our Water Talks program here that started last year and is running till later this year is a technical assistance being provided to help develop projects in the area. And I wish there was enough time and money for the Water Talks program to actually fully implement projects. But, as we've just seen, that can take years and years. And unfortunately, we don't have that luxury. But we are taking them as far in the design and development process as possible. Just a little bit of background here. We were mentioning earlier that what we've been trying to work on here is a process where community needs can be seen, can really inspire projects at the very beginning. A lot of times, traditionally, we see, especially with water infrastructure projects, that they are inspired by, they're often driven by water infrastructure agencies that have the capacity and the infrastructure to be able to work on them, but they also have a legal responsibility. And a lot of times this is a regulatory responsibility. It might relate to maintaining a certain amount of water supply based on population or certain water quality requirements or habitat considerations, all kinds of considerations that agencies have to be able to meet. And, everybody who works there, it's their job to meet those. And so a lot of times infrastructure projects are designed around those requirements, and that sometimes what's really at the heart of what a community may need may or may not be at the forefront, other than just the very essence of water supply and having clean water and things like that. So what we've been seeking to do through the Water Talks program is to really dig down and look at what are the needs reflected in our communities across the region, and then how can we develop projects and programs that are inspired by that. So back in October, really of 2021, over a year ago, a design team from Tree People, another nonprofit organization called the Council for Watershed Health, and a engineering firm, Stantec, and then a Native American support organization called Sacred Places Institute for Indigenous Peoples, gathered to review data from the Upper Santa Clara River Strengths and Needs Assessment and brainstorm how the data that had been collected might be addressed through different avenues of projects or programs. And as we shared some of the key issues that emerged from that Strengths and Needs Assessment, included drinking water quality and tap water quality. This was especially true in the city of Santa Clarita and kind of west side areas. Then we saw a lot of concern around water availability for fire and agriculture, firefighting and agriculture over in east side communities, as well as natural hazards and just water supply in general. And as to strengths that people pointed out again and again, was the access to open space and a respect for nature. They were very, very strong, and not surprising. That's why, people want to live here. And we wanted the projects to reflect all of this spirit, and just, the differences between, say, our area here and the really dense urban areas on the other side of the hill in Los Angeles, where we saw communities, water wasn't their top concern. Housing situations, an unhoused community, and air quality, and a variety of issues that were top concerns. And then when it got to water-related issues, it was a lot of tap water quality, contaminants, industrial contaminants, things like that. What's really interesting is that here in our area, just of general concern, water scored really highly, just as a general concern among community members. And we really took note of that. So then after those initial brainstorming sessions in the fall of 2021, in the early part of last year, this same group of Tree People and engineers and designers from Council for Watershed Health and Stantec took on assignments to develop a total of 7 basic ideas and develop them into project sketches. And let's see, then we had a very special opportunity that came along in the early part of 2022. And that was that funding that the state had put together in 2021 to respond to that big drought emergency. We saw those maps, and the drought emergency was so intense in 2021 that the legislature pulled together all kinds of funding sources into drought emergency funding packages. And part of that was a project or program called the Drought and Multi-Benefit Urban and Multi-Benefit Drought Relief Program. And this included money for rural communities, for urban areas. And they also took a certain amount of money and set it aside for programs like Water Talks across the state. So in LA County and Ventura County, where we all work together, there was $5 million set aside, which was great. But we had like a matter of weeks, literally, to define projects from our regions that could make use of this and qualify for this very unique funding. And so luckily, or the state was just going to take the money and put it into their general pot of money for this program, and people would just have to compete for it, agencies and organizations. So in looking at the opportunity of this pot of money, the Water Talks program was able to look at some of this initial sketching work that we'd done and things that we learned through the needs assessment. And here in our region, there were two projects in particular that just really popped out and said, wait a minute, these would really qualify for this program. And so let's see what we can do. And one of those was a program for Arundo mapping and removal, priority areas along the Santa Clara River. And I'll get a little bit more to that later. And then the other is a program called Rural Water Supply Reliability. And then there were, and we were able to get funding secured for those two projects. So they actually get to move forward to implementation. Then in then continuing last year and through this year, there are 5 other projects currently under development, and these are going to be moving through initial planning and design stages. So let's take a look at the next slide, and we can start getting into these. So here's the list of these projects. The top 5 are the ones we're working on now. And then the 2 down at the bottom, which I think I'll actually start with, are the 2 that we were actually able to obtain funding for, and just let everybody know quickly about those. Next slide, please. So Arundo mapping and removal. So project overview here is that it's looking to restore sections of the Santa Clara River, particularly those that have been deeply affected by invasive plants and particularly Arundo donax, which or giant reed, grows up like, kind of looks like bamboo. It sucks water out of the ground at an alarming rate. It really challenges that water that's down there in the aquifer, taking it out. And this particular grant is able to support the work that's being done, a priority area at the LA Ventura County line. You can kind of see the map there in that oval area. And there are a lot of areas that, as watershed coordinators, we've gotten more and more involved in understanding the breadth and the depth and the concern of this, of the invasive plant work, and that needs to happen all the way along the river. And in our particular area, it's really important because the invasive species travel downstream. This heavy flow of water over the last several weeks, the atmospheric river pulled up a lot of rhizomes from these invasive plants and sent them further downstream, where they're going to, continue to pull water out of the ground and create wildfire hazards all the way along the river. There are the lead agency for this is the Santa Clara River Conservancy, which is a nonprofit organization working on both sides of the county line on restoring the Santa Clara River. And there are multiple partners involved in identifying, prioritizing, and restoring the river. There's a lot of mapping going on with LIDAR technology, a lot of activity going on this. And as I say, removing invasive species and replacing them with native habitat to help clean water all the way along the river and make our areas a lot more resilient with increasing water supply that we can then draw from. Next slide, please. The other project that has received funding is the Rural Water Supply Reliability Program. This project overview provides short and long-term relief from drought for private wells in the Acton and Agua Dulce areas. These are areas that, while they would not be considered technically as disadvantaged communities were classified early on in the Water Talks program as underrepresented areas because of the unique nature of the kind of rural quality of these communities that is so unique to LA County, that these communities are chronically underrepresented, and their needs are chronically underrepresented in planning in LA County, just because of the way we're built and the way we've developed over the years. Other communities that kind of fall into this category are our Native American communities as well, because their needs and interests aren't built into the systems that we built over the last 100 years. So we've been hard at work on this already. Tree People ended up taking on lead for this program. We reached out to a lot of other entities to see if there was anybody interested in taking on the program. But the short turnaround on getting that funding, we didn't find anybody interested. So Tree People said, we're going to take it on rather than have this money disappear and this opportunity disappear. So we've already done a lot of surveys. We just had a big community meeting last week with folks to help design the program. It's launching spring of this year, and then it runs through the end of 2024. Next slide, please. So now we get into the projects that are actually moving, that we're actually doing design work on. We don't know if we'll be able to get these to a point of funding and implementation, but we're going to get them as close as we can through the Water Talks program. So the first one up here is Acton Flooding Multi-Benefit Solutions. And here the project overview is to identify stormwater capture and infiltration features to address local flooding concerns, particularly in what we might call the main strip or downtown area of Acton, just before the Crown Valley Road makes the curve and starts sending water off into the Santa Clara River. And so we want to, and it's an area where kind of when we see on this small map here, it's really down at the bottom part of where these gray stripe areas are. So we've got a huge hydrologic area here that drains into that area. And, it's always the challenge and unfortunate that a town was built there a couple hundred years ago, but it is the reality, and it's created a lot of challenges. So we're working especially with Stantec, the engineering firm, and they've been developing a desktop analysis of potential solution sites. They've been doing modeling and analysis of how the watershed might work and behave in a variety of ways, and then prioritizing some ideal solutions to work on with LA County Public Works. And I'll just say, LA County Public Works has been at work on this project for a really long time, like 30 years, something like that. And they've identified ways in which they could address the challenge, but it's tens of millions of dollars, like $50 million or more is what they've identified. And so that just immediately creates a lot of challenges and barriers. And a lot of the approaches they want to take are very traditional approaches that are like debris basins, where there are just kind of areas carved out where when it does rain, mud and other things can just kind of flow off to the side, and then they have to be scraped out, or different pieces of gray infrastructure can be put in. And, we've heard from the folks in the community and even the Acton, and this might be true for the Agua Dulce districts with their, the districts and their design standards, is really looking at what can we do in terms of nature-based solutions. And we've seen this in other parts of LA County where traditional approaches to flooding can be looked at with alternatives, but you got to look at them, and it takes a while and it takes money to figure that out. So that's what we're working on with this particular piece. And of course, we want to really work closely with LA County. because if this is going to be successful, they'll need to take on the work and the long-term maintenance. It would be very difficult for any nonprofit or town council to try to take this on, a huge project, because it'll still be big and expensive. And then what we'll be providing is an alternatives analysis report, and probably at some point doing a lot more checking in with community and sharing these. But, we want to make sure we've got a lot of buy-in from county agencies. So they really feel like they have ownership of this project. So we're really excited about this, and Stantec has been coming up with a lot of interesting information. So if we could move on to the next slide. Water resources inventory. This is a really exciting project, which is to create a water resources inventory report for land that has been acquired by the Tataviam Land Conservancy. And this is very new. The Land Conservancy is only a few years old, and it's tied to the Fernandinho Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, which represents the ancestral homeland of Tataviam people. And that is very, very significant in our Santa Clara Valley and river area. Probably a majority of the area is ancestral homeland for these people. And so there is some land that's being returned to ownership of the tribe. And so they are now looking at what can they do with it, and what can be done. They're looking at a few dozen acres they've acquired, and certainly they want to be able to do native plant restoration and things like that, being able to make use of native plants for food and medicinal purposes for tribal and indigenous people, a space for education, things like that. So one of the things that they really needed help was identifying and assessing the water sources. What are water rights looking like? What is stormwater capture? How does stormwater flow through the area? Because there is a creek running nearby the area that runs through the property or right along the side. And what are the related uses and issues related to water? So this is going to be providing a report of how all this works, how water works on the site, both organically and what the legal issues might be, and where there might be water pipes, wells, and establishment that they can tap into, things like that. So that then the tribe, as they make their decisions about how they're going to use the site, they'll have that information in place. Next slide, next project. Septic education. We certainly saw through the strengths and needs assessment that there were areas in our region, unincorporated areas that have been on septic systems for a long time and can face challenges among some of their local water agencies that we've heard about, the water suppliers, small water suppliers that are just helping to serve, a few dozen homes and areas. This is in unincorporated areas, Acton, I would also say, but also around Castaic and Valverde, a lot of folks on septic. And, what could we do to help support these areas? And so we were looking at, could we assess, offer to, provide free or low-cost assessments for septic systems, make recommendations, things like that, to do analysis of what's happening in different areas. And so then we put out surveys and talked to community members and got a lot of feedback, and really became clear that what would probably be most helpful is just to give things that could empower homeowners. When it gets to septic systems, it's personal, and people can be very sensitive about what they want to share, what they, and what they want to have people know about what's going on with their septic systems, understandably so. because it is a personal responsibility, and therefore also a personal asset and a personal liability. Understood. But what we really felt could be of great value is going to be an education program, and that's what we're working on right now. And that's to provide workshops on providing more in-depth training on, because a lot of folks move to areas, they inherit a septic system, and then unfortunately they might have to learn the hard way how to take care of it. And so getting deeper education about what's involved, and then information and referral, should they want to have an assessment done, should they see that, oh, maybe I have symptoms of challenges that are going on, and maybe I should have it looked at, which is a private assessment that's confidential. And then we could also provide some referrals as to low-cost loans and grants in case there are big challenges with a septic system, because they can get really expensive, thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars to an individual homeowner. So we will be hosting one or more of these in-depth training sessions. This spring, we've identified a resource that could probably do a pretty good job of taking in-depth education, and we're probably looking at May to do one or more events. Next slide, please. Tap water quality testing. We'd heard, across the LA region that tap water issues were of concern, and that included here in our region. And so we're really looking at how we could design a project that could increase community awareness and understanding of tap water quality. And one of those models that, we looked at here and across, the other side of the hill in LA is working with community-based organizations to be able to provide tap water quality testing, or with local agencies to provide testing, in the home. We've met a lot with Santa Clarita Valley Water Agency, and we've had some really great conversations. They have a lot of interest in finding out more about what they might be able to do. There have been some testing programs that they've done in past, but really nothing since before the pandemic. And so we're having a lot of conversations. We'll be able to take time to flesh out and design what a program would look like, see if there are funding sources from the state or other agencies that might be able to pay for a program, and identify leading partners that might want to be involved in such a program. So that's where we're at with that, and we hope to have something, a path forward by mid to late summer on that. Next, and really on all of these projects. Next slide, please. Then we've got the water system partnerships, and I think this might be the last one on our list, but certainly not the least. We talked a little bit about, and certainly saw from the needs assessment, the number of small systems, as I say, communities where small mutual water companies, privately owned or semi-privately owned by the community, have emerged over the last, 100 years. And, maybe 50, 100, 150 homes might be served through these. And then, and they can run into challenges because there's not a lot of revenue and support coming in through this, or it might be trailer parks, trailer home communities, things like this. And there's not big scale and not a lot of money to work with. So if challenges do emerge, it's tough. So what we wanted to do was reach out and offer to bring any of the groups together. We've heard back from one or two, and we're going to do more outreach to see if there's interest in just coming together for conversations about potential ways in which resources can be shared, or what are the questions and the issues that we could do some more research on and help folks with. So we're doing a lot of engagement now and hoping to set up workshops in the next couple of months to learn more and see how we can be of help and assistance. Next slide, please. So that's it. So before we really move on to what's coming up next, I just wanted to see if there were any projects or any questions that had come up about the different projects. That's really been our first chance to talk about them. And we've got this being recorded, but we're also happy to kind of come and do project updates on these for some of our community groups in the area, our coalition and some of the other nonprofits that are involved in the area. Any questions? Well, if not, I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Great. So I just wanted to let you all know about our upcoming workshops and field trips. Tonight's community workshop is one of a 3-part virtual series of workshops, each one following with an in-person site visit to see firsthand what we discussed in that corresponding workshop. So our first field trip will be to the Canyon Country Community Center, where we will see a community-driven completed water project at work and learn the process and funding that made it happen. Our second workshop will be on indoor drinking water quality, and that will follow with a field trip to SCV Water's groundwater treatment plant. And our final workshop will be on green infrastructure, and we will announce that field trip as well as the dates for all of these upcoming workshops and trips in the near future. So keep a lookout in your emails for the flyer. And I also did want to mention that we also have an upcoming private tour of the St. Francis Dam in Santa Clarita on Thursday, March 2nd from 9:30 to 11:30. And it's not part of this series, so please reach out to us if you're interested in attending. And I'll drop an email in the chat so you can contact us. And here's a quick video clip of what we will be seeing at the Canyon Country Community Center. And are we able to play that clip, Talia?
I don't know if we're getting the audio on this.
Do you know if it's muted?
Are you not hearing any audio?
No.
Okay, let me try again.
Joining us today to talk about the infiltration system at the new Canyon Country Community Center is Environmental Services Project Coordinator Oliver Kramer. Hi, Oliver. Hi, Garrett. So tell us where we are right now and the benefits of this infiltration system.
We're standing just above the Mercado, and underneath the parking lot area here, we have a unique infiltration system that captures, treats, and infiltrates stormwater runoff from the Sierra Highway area.
How does that work?
The water is held slowly as it percolates into the ground and slowly becomes our groundwater, which is in turn becomes our drinking water later on. Since its opening in October 2021, has captured almost 13 million gallons of rainwater, cleaned up pollutants, and allow it to slowly recharge our local groundwater.
And the parking lot here is sloped, so the water can easily be collected from Sierra Highway. Can you talk about what went into the design of this project?
We had a talented group of engineers and designers who looked at this site and decided that this was the best area to capture pollutants as well as allow the water to infiltrate.
Thank you, Oliver. So if you want to learn more, please visit greensantaclarita.com to learn more about the infiltration system, upcoming green events, and helpful programs to live a green lifestyle. We'll see you next week, Santa Clarita.
Okay, and final slide. Great, and thank you all for coming. Does anyone have any questions?
I will put out one more plug, and it should be coming into everybody's inbox here pretty soon. And that is if you're interested in the Arundel issue and the restoration issue, we do have a very special event coming up, not related to that's related to another part of the Water Talks program, March 15th, where we will be spending a day looking at an Arundel site that's been very recently cut down and is in early stages of restoration in Santa Clarita, and then going further downriver near Fillmore to look at a very large site that is further along in the restoration process, and along with with a hosted lunch in the middle of the day, and that'll be on Wednesday, March 15th. So back to you, Heather.
That's it. I'm finished.
Okay. Well, thanks, everybody. You know, and if you have any questions, you know where we are. Please reach out and let us know if you want any further information. Otherwise, thank you, especially Cher and Mary, Paul, who was with us for a while there, for joining us. And, you know, let us know how we can share more information with your audiences as well. Thanks so much.